Well, good morning and welcome to Water and Stone. My name is Dieter Randolph.
And I'm Jenny Randolph.
And this is our third week of the Unmasking series, the second week of discussions about this topic. And it's really been interesting to see the kind of comments and responses that people have. Controversial name, Unmasking, given everything that's going on. But I love the idea of having a minute to talk about what we really mean and the overarching theme of taking down the barrier.
Yeah, I saw that comment on our social as well.
Somebody's like, unfortunate name. And I'm like, no, that's kind of the point.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you know us at all, if you've watched us at all, if you've talked to us at all, you know how we feel about actually wearing your mask outside. And
everything
that's
we do is about,
right.
Take care of
other people,
love
take care
your
of yourself,
neighbor.
Right.
This is not going to be a talk about, you know what? Stop paying your insurance. Go ahead and throw that seatbelt
right?
off.
I'm like, if you
maybe
know us
close
at
your
all,
eyes when you're driving. Use the force a little bit. So
yeah, I found it funny. I had to chuckle to myself because I'm like,
I had the same response.
I'm like, do you know us?
But you know what? I love
that's
that
all right.
because it's very easy to assume that when we're given some kind of a direction, spiritual or otherwise, to take it to a physical place and think about the physical mask, for example.
Right.
And that totally understandable. And the person who said that, they had a point if we were talking about physical things.
Right.
But we have it, part of our job as spiritual seekers, whatever you want to call yourself, your job as a Christian, let's say, is to take the messages that you receive in your life, explicit or otherwise, and take them to a more than physical level. Right. Because that's where we do our work. We do our work between us and God, manifest out in life, not the other way around if you want it to work at all. And that means we should start our work by doing our opening prayer.
I was wondering if you were going to get there.
You know me. Let's share it together.
God is, and I am. I stand on holy ground. Right here and right now there is truth. Right here and right now, there is freedom. Right here and right now, there is life. This is who I am. I am ready. From now on, I speak the truth. From now on, I choose freedom. From now on, this is my life. The unstoppable love of God prepares the way. I am ready.
And so it is, and so it does, in Jesus' name.
Amen.
And so I want to let you know that just as last week's discussion was inspired by a book, this week's discussion is inspired by the chapter called Manifestation in a book called Christian Healing by Charles Fillmore. And again, this is one of those books that's been out for a long time, so there's been a whole bunch of different covers. This is the one that I have several copies.
You have several copies.
This is the copy that was closest to my hand as I passed the bookshelf to come down to talk to you today. But once again, the chapter is Manifestation, and it's a really interesting thing because when you have Lessons in Truth in Christian Healing, the chapters actually line up about the subject matter. Whereas last week we talked about the denials chapter in Lessons in Truth. The manifestation chapter covers some of the same things, but the difference is where Lessons in Truth is about big picture things, Christian healing, that word healing.
It's about you. Yeah.
You can kind of tell. It's how it goes
inside of you,
Yeah. And so that's completely appropriate for what we're going to be talking about today.
Well, it's the soul, spirit, soul, and then body. That's always, and if you've been around the last couple of months, you know the pattern by now. But for new folks, that's always the way that we do it, where it's big picture, what does it mean for me? And then how do I take it out into the world? And, again, spirit, soul, and body.
And by that same token, I bet you are guessing that there's going to be a third book that we'll talk about next week. Good guess. And you may even know what book it is, but otherwise, I'll mention it in the comments. So pay attention to those comments.
Stick around,
and that kind of a thing. But you don't have to own a copy of the book. It's just that what we talk about is in some ways inspired by some of the things that Mr. Fillmore wrote in the book. And I wanted to actually get started with one of the main concepts at the beginning of that manifestation chapter in Christian Healing. He talks about the idea that traditionally, quote unquote, scientific people tend to not have room for faith. Mm-hmm. And traditionally, quote unquote, religious people tend to not have room for reason, for science, for using their heads.
Right.
And there's this imagined for the most part, gulf between head and heart. And Charles Fillmore is saying that that's kind of the problem. Because the deal is that if you are only a heart person, it's like running around like a chicken with your head cut off. There's wonderful things about having that feeling nature, about acting out in the world. But, God made that wonderful thing between your ears too. This stuff should make sense to your head and your heart, and it should work in your life. It's that same Trinity that we just talked about. And by the same token, a scientific person is someone who goes from cause to effect. That's kind of the table stakes definition of what science is. Well, Mr. Fillmore would argue that if you don't take it up to cause with a capital C, you're just not going all the way with your science. And so what I want to share with you is that little note at the beginning of that chapter in Christian Healing has to do with find things that make sense to your head and your heart. Find things that work in your life. We're never going to ask you to do something that is illogical, let's say. And we're also never going to ask you to do something that's contrary to your heart. It just doesn't work that way. And so ask yourself what your situations are asking of you. Do they violate the precepts of what makes sense? Do they violate the precepts of something going on in your heart? That's something to look at. And as we're looking for things to get done with, that might be one of them. So as far as the head and heart thing, the next thing in the chapter, and from here we're kind of going to go different places in what the book, but there's this one other little piece that I wanted to bring up. It's here in this manifestation chapter of Christian Healing that Charles Fillmore talks about the idea that in Genesis, the 6 days of creation, plus the special bonus round of the Sabbath day, the 6 days of creation, he talks about them as the process of getting the idea. And as a kid, I always thought that was really interesting, but there's some pros and cons to that. When you read that, you and I have both read that book, been reading it since we were kids. So when you were, coming from a traditional religious background where I would imagine it's very much like, no, this is how the world got made.
Right.
Kind of a thing. When you read that thing about it's about getting the idea, what did that do for you? Did it make sense? Did it feel weird? What was
I think in our tradition, and I talked about this a little bit last week, but in my youth, I was Assemblies of God. We went to the Mormon church for a little while. We were Southern Baptist for a little while. My family really went and experienced different sorts of religions all over, but you would consider pretty much those three, and that was like my formative years from like 5 to 12, let's say. 5 years old to 12 years old.
Theological differences, but in general, very mainstream.
They're in mainstream. They're fundamental. There are differences, but not in Sunday school, for example. You're getting the basics.
You're looking at the same curriculum, more or less.
Exactly. You're getting the basics. So when any question would arise, it was just this is the way that it is. Don't ask any questions. Our minds can't understand.
Lord works in mysterious ways.
Well, yeah, we don't know, but not just that the Lord works in mysterious ways. It's that we can't possibly ever know or understand.
So questions like how is it that there's the first day, second day, third day when we don't have the sun and the moon right away? How do you know what a day is? Those kinds of questions you would just kind of get shot down.
It is what it is. Just take it at face value. We're telling you what it is, and just learn the song that goes along with it. Learn, and because in Sunday school they had songs for everything, which is wonderful because I still know the books of the Bible, and I still know. It did give me a fundamental understanding of the knowledge of what the Bible has in it, and so I can really speak to that now. So I really am grateful for that time, but you weren't asking questions. It wasn't until I was in my teenage years that it was brought up to the idea that we interpret that allegorically, that symbolically, that's what happens. And for me, I'm a very analytical person. I'm a very numbers person. So for me, that really sort of jibed with my understanding, I think.
So did it feel liberating, that idea, or did it feel challenging?
No, I think it was, for me, it was liberating, because it was just like I could finally get my head around, oh, that's what that means. Okay, it's not literal. It's not that
it's not a 24-hour day.
Right.
The word that the actual
right.
language of the scripture uses is more like an age.
An age.
Or basically, the better definition is as long as it took.
Right. And when you're a little kid, when somebody says day, that's what you think of. I mean, your day is structured. As a little kid, it's pretty controlled.
You get up and you have
it's
some
pretty
Wheaties
scheduled.
and you go to do the thing.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Snack time.
Well,
yeah,
exactly. So and
notice
then,
how I punctuate my days by food.
Yeah. But no, so for as you're learning as a little kid, it would be. But I would argue that I think there are adults that are still functioning that way, where it's punctuated by this understanding of, well, this is what a day is, and this is what time is, and
and that settles
time is an illusion. We all know this,
right? And but that brings back one of the main points that we're going to hit many, many times throughout, not just this series, but anytime we have a conversation, it's bound to come up sooner or later, and that is, we talked about it during the Change series that we just finished. If it is spiritual, healthy, even functional, it is going to be the beginning of a conversation and not the end of a conversation. So watch out for, nope, Bible says it, we're done talking about it, because that's not the way the people who wrote the Bible even used the Bible. It was the beginning of a conversation and a debate, and we talked about that. But in this instance, you get to decide what's healthy. Is it healthy to go, nope, it says day, that means day, 24 hours, Eastern Standard Time, boom. Or is it healthy to go, well, let's talk about what that means and how that feels, and let's engage head and heart in this process. I can't believe that God is bound by the concept of a clock face.
Right.
This has all got to be way bigger than the material stuff. Mm-hmm. And so when I read that as a kid, coming not from a very traditional kind of even fire and brimstone-y, if you want, kind of a tradition, I come from a New Thought Unity background, as you know. And so for me, it was all about ideas, thoughts, affirmations, these kinds of concepts. Say the statements, learn the thing, memorize the 40 statement affirmation of faith or whatever. And somehow in and through the process of intellectualization, you will get there. That's what I thought it meant. And I think that's what a lot of people in Unity and New Thought think it means. I don't think that that's what Charles Fillmore's talking about, but I think that that's what a lot of people think.
Well, again, going back to when you're learning these basic ideas as a child, you and me, I was learning, listen, just have faith. God's got this. You don't need to understand it. Just go and live your life and do that. And I have to say, as an adult, I still lean on that. And I think you would probably say the same thing.
Well, I'm from the other place,
right,
because
exactly.
I was learning.
You were learning that.
And so, you must figure this out. If you don't figure it out, it ain't going to work. That's kind of what the message that I got is, you got to feel it out. I got to figure it out.
Right.
Which is really funny, because if you've been watching these and listening to our podcast and even the book that we wrote together a while back, Branching In, all of those things, by now that I'm really proud of the fact that we really kind of defy the stereotype. A lot of times people go, oh, well, the woman is the feeling nature, and the man is the thinking. And she's the brains of this operation, and I'm the heart of this operation. That's kind of in broad strokes. I mean, obviously there's overlap.
Yeah, sure.
But I come from that place, and so it's really funny.
But I'm the analyst. I'm the numbers.
The numbers person, you come from this feeling tradition. And as the heart person, I come from this thinking tradition. It's really been, we both went to the wrong place. There was a mix up at the factory. But
can you imagine though, a double analytical? And I honestly, or a double heart. I mean, I think God kind of maybe knew what was happening. I'd be wearing a lot of fluffy
clothes all the time, and you'd be all
well, no, you'd be on a commune somewhere, and I'd be in a laboratory.
Yeah. But I want to take those words of Mr. Fillmore's to heart at the beginning of the manifestation chapter. You need both. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, when I read that chunk about the days of creation, part of me went, okay, good. Mm-hmm. This is the process of getting the idea. And I want to apply this to my life, because I know that life is all about getting the idea, cracking the code. But when you think about it, there's very little about life that actually involves cracking the code. You can't figure out somebody and then be in love. Love is a feeling. There's no set of rules, for example. You can't figure out how your favorite song is your favorite song. Nothing works that way, that kind of thing. Right. You need something different to be at play. But more than that, it didn't occur to me until years later. I just sort of took it at face value. And once again, Unity and New Thought people are just as guilty of fundamentalism as fundamentalists, because I just went, oh, that's what it says. We're done talking about it.
Like I said, in the same way, same but different problem, right?
So. Right. But so anyway, I didn't realize until years later that, wait a minute, it doesn't take me 6 days or ages or whatever to get the idea. The idea is the idea. Gravity pulls you to the center of the earth. Cool, got it. I got the idea. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's details to work out, but in general, don't put your hand on a hot stove. I get it. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't date people who break your heart. I got the idea, and yet people put their hand on hot stoves. People date people that break their hearts. It's not because they don't have the idea. They know better. Mm-hmm. How many times have you been in a situation where you did something even though you knew better? You had the idea. It didn't take you 6 days. And so I realize as an adult reading Christian Healing with hopefully more grown-up sensibilities, I realized that that's not really what's going on. The 6 days of creation are the recipe for you if you're working on some kind of a manifestation in your life, but it does not take 6 days to get the idea. It has to do with how long it takes you
to get to your heart.
Yeah. This is about formulating a knowing. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage you to take a look, open that Bible and look at those days of creation in Genesis.
Well, it's interesting. They all start with "let there be."
Yes.
And so it's not like, it doesn't start with, okay, understand this. It doesn't sound, okay, think about this. It says, let there be.
And it's
let there be light. Let there be.
The Lord is definitely a Beatles fan, but part of it too
well,
is.
Who wouldn't be?
Yeah. I mean, come on. Nobody even talks about the Dave Clark 5 anymore. No. But the deal is that's really, really interesting and really, really important. Not the Dave Clark 5 part, the other part. Because again, the thing that I came from, my tradition was, if it is to be, it's up to me. I'm going to make these things happen. Mm-hmm. But that's not how God creates. Right. If you're supposed to follow this recipe, and like I said, go look at your Bible, pick up a book like Christian Healing. There's a book called the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary if you want to dig deeper. Charles Fillmore also wrote a book called Mysteries of Genesis that digs deeper too. There's lots of places you can look, but in general, look at that creation story and go, well, what does it mean for me to allow in the lesser and greater lights, for example? What does that mean for me? But the interesting part is every step is a step of allowing. Right. Let there be light. Not, I'm going to make me some light. Mm-hmm. Not, I'm going to force it. Not even, I'm going to beg
understand
for it.
I'm
going to figure out light.
Right.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Let there be light. The basic concept is that all of the creation and good and promise of beauty and excellence, whatever it is already there. You have to allow it.
So in this part of when it works in you, you have to get rid of those ideas about how you're going to force it, think it, figure it out, even, like you said, even beg or even like, just try and wish your hardest, because that's kind of a heart feeling too. Sure. So, but the idea is that if you really want to get this growth, you have to get rid of those ideas that you're in any kind of control at all in that situation.
And I know that flies in the face.
Let there be.
Oh yeah, let there be. Yeah. I know that flies in the face of all of the self-help, have it, wish it, want it kind of books. Brian Griffin,
Thank you,
great
Brian
author.
Griffin.
Yeah. But it flies in the face of that kind of a thing, but for good reason. Like I said, look at your life. If you're having trouble experiencing something, like you want the money to be there, you want the love to be there, you're looking at manifestation stuff. Once again, chapter's called Manifestation. If you're looking at manifestation stuff, understand that God doesn't create through forcing. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying, good luck.
Right.
Look at the recipe for how the universe is made. You're trying to make something, probably a pretty good place to look. And let's go deeper. It's really interesting that first of all, it begins with God recognizing that, there's room before the days even start. And then every day is let there be something, right? So it starts with openness and emptiness, making room, acknowledging.
Isn't that funny? We talked about that. We talked about the empty house, and this time we're actually talking about like an empty universe. That's where it began. That's right?
Lessons in Truth and Christian Healing.
Yeah,
and
it's great.
This other book that we're going to talk about next week, they all line up.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing to read them like they're all one big book, but the difference is big picture in my life, out in my world. But anyway. It's interesting that it starts with the big idea of we need something here. There's room. Every step in the intermediate.
That's right.
Every intermediary step. It's like I talk like a pirate. In the intermediate, every step in the middle has to do with acknowledgement, release, making room. And then you know what happens on the bonus 7th day. It's the Sabbath. Allowing this to be.
Yeah.
Every single moment, big at the beginning.
It's surrender.
The whole thing. The creation process. This is the thing to write down. The creation process is the process of surrender. And that might seem completely 180 degrees opposite from what you're used to. But maybe that's why stuff hasn't been working before.
Right.
Or if it has worked, it's been hard.
I was going to say, let's boil this down. We've been talking about great big universe stuff. So what does that mean for me in my life as far as relationship, if I'm looking for somebody to love? What does that mean in my life if I'm looking, to prosper monetarily more? If that is the creation process, it starts with that empty space, taking out all of your old ideas about what you think it should be, about how you think it should go. Plans are great. Goals are great. And you need the understanding and the head part, right? But you have to go, okay, I got an idea. Now you got to let it go.
Can you let yourself
Isn't that interesting? And it's
huge.
So hard.
Can you let yourself be lovable? Or do you got to be cool? You know the difference, and it's the plot of every teen movie. Can you let yourself be loved? Not on your terms.
Right, I was going to say.
And again, we talked a little bit about that in previous weeks.
Let people love you the way that they
But as it turns out, the process of, talking about it in a romantic side, is a process of surrender. And it applies to every single thing. If you want a better job, can you let yourself be educated? Right. Or do you got to know everything? Because you're not going to learn, you're not going to grow, you're not going to go the places. Can you let yourself be open to new opportunities? If somebody gives you an offer, can you be the kind of person who says yes? These are all surrender things. Think about your life in terms of this. The process of creation is a process of surrender. And I want to go back one more time. We talked about it at the beginning when we talked about the unmasking thing. I think that so often it's easy to go to the physical place. Notice, none of the things that we talked about are physical things. I'm not talking about surrendering a physical thing. That's not how you get loved. It's about surrendering ego stuff.
And we don't expect you to literally have an empty house.
Yeah. You don't require that in order to do your next thing.
Please get a bed.
Yeah.
If you don't have one, they're very nice.
It's dandy. But
yeah.
But the point is,
maybe a nice chair.
It's never about the stuff. So again, the process of creation is a process of surrender, but specifically, what we are here to surrender has very little, if anything, to do with physical things. And this reminds me, there's a wonderful passage in the Gospels where Jesus, in so many words, says, "Why are you guys praying for stuff all the time?"
Yeah.
I mean, it's paraphrased, but that's basically what he says. He's basically says, you're wasting so much time and energy and passion and everything else praying for God to give you things. That's interesting because now, 2,000 plus years later, a lot of people spend a lot of time praying for things when Jesus specifically said, that's not what prayer is for.
Yeah, because God already knows.
Yeah,
God already knows what you need.
The quote is, your Father in heaven knows what you need before you ask it. And the intimation there is that God's a good dad. God knows
he's paying attention.
Yeah. And in fact, you get to a place where you realize, if I'm asking God for things, am I really actually kind of telling God that he doesn't know best? Something to think about. Jesus is saying that prayer is not about asking God for things because God already knows about that. Instead, prayer is the process of releasing your attachment to things, releasing your attachment to things going people. A specific way. You're releasing your attachment to a specific outcome. All of these things. Prayer is the prospect and the process of going, okay, God, I know you're there. I know you're here.
Well, I think in my spiritual growth and my spiritual evolution, and I hope to never stop. I hope to never stop growing and never stop learning, and I want those moments of enlightenment. And,
God is infinite, so there's always more to learn and more to grow through.
But I think maybe a simplification of where I have been at, especially maybe the last 10 years or so like that, I think for me is more of a practice of just getting to that faith place.
Well, and
the release, and just to go, well, you know what, and that as an intellectual person, as an analytical person,
you want a reasonable rate of return, right?
Well, yeah, and it's
did you sign the thing?
Yeah, exactly. Right? And it's interesting because you have to raise your kids, you have to make sure that they're fed and watered. That they're sleeping.
One of our children is a pony.
Well, I mean, sometimes it feels like they're animals in your house. Let's be honest. There were times in the past.
It's true.
You walk into their rooms and sometimes you're like,
we need to hear some hay.
Yeah. It would have completed the ensemble.
It's a very live, laugh, love, Cracker Barrel kind of a vibe. I like it. Farmhouse.
Anyway, but I think we're charged in our lives to, okay, you have responsibilities to not let this child die. You have responsibility to earn this paycheck. You have a responsibility to honor your mother and your father. You have to do all of this, and you have to figure out how to do that.
Right.
And I want to go back and say, so for me, again, in my spiritual experience, getting those two to mesh, being responsible and then letting things go. I think one of the hardest things is as your children start to become adults and independent is to allow them to do that instead of, being the helicopter parent. But then there are other parents who are like, all right, 18, you're out,
right.
And then there are ones like they're 30 and they're still living in the house.
Right.
I mean, neither one is a good way to do it. But, I also want to go back to the point of, we're never going to tell you that bad stuff is not going to happen.
Well, you know
right?
what? That's really important. So take a minute. It's going to be okay. And in fact, it's in the process of okay right now.
Right.
God's here and God's in charge and all that. But that does not mean that you're not going to have to learn some things. It does not mean that you're not going to have to grow. And this is big because one of the reasons, once again, Jesus is telling people don't pray for things all the time. And we still, as a culture, have not learned that lesson particularly well. We still try to solve our problems with things, even though we've been warned about it since before the time of Jesus Christ, But I think one of the reasons that people attract things and think in terms of things and all that is because they're trying to shield themselves against challenge.
Yeah. And you can't.
If I have a bigger roof over the house, what if I had a roof that was 30 feet thick, then I'd be okay.
Right.
What if I owned 7 cars and if one broke down, I wouldn't care. What if I had, a spare whatever it is, and that way of thinking can make you feel safe in a way. But the truth is that's not anything. All of those things are a substitute for faith. Well, if I tell you that I can't be happy until I have $1 million, then I'm telling you I can't be happy.
Well, and again, in my own spiritual evolution and growth, I think that was such a big thing for me, is realizing that I wasn't shielded from challenge, and then when challenge happened, trying to find something or someone to blame. And I think that's how people lose faith. They start to blame God. They blame the people that they love. They blame themselves. It's like, and so if you're facing a challenge and you're trying to figure it out intellectually, you can't. Even that process is a let it be. Let the challenges that you're going through, let them happen, because we can't be shielded from it.
There's a story that I've told a bunch of times, and so you may have heard it before if you've been around me, but I'll tell the quick version. There was a time in our life where we just didn't have any money. I mean, it was very, very difficult. There was all, you name a struggle involved with money, and we have dealt with it, by and large. There were rough times, and obviously people have had it rougher. It's not a competition, but we had some really hard times.
Yeah, but for us, we were young and it was scary. And
during those times,
you don't know what to do.
During those times of real fear, of, all of it, I got it in my goofy head, and to the point of fixation where I think about it all the time. I thought, if I could just get $5 million. And for some reason, that was the number that stuck out for me. I don't know why, but 5 is a good Bible number, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Doesn't matter. But I thought to myself, if I could just get $5 million, and I would be brushing my teeth in the morning, thinking about, okay, if I had $5 million, I'd set aside $1 million for each of the kids, and I'd do this, and I'd pay the taxes, and we'd do this. And I had it all spent. But the point was that, and I would rehearse that all the time, at least once a day, usually a lot more than that. And I had the gall to think that somehow that was part of like an affirmation process, that was a visualization thing or whatever. And the funny thing was, no matter how much I dwelled on that magical $5 million that was going to solve all the problems, money was not working for us. It was getting worse, in fact. Really bad, guys. And I got to the point where I realized that apparently $5 million is how much it costs for me to not have faith. Right. Because what I was really saying is, if I have $5 million, I don't have to trust anything. Right. I don't have to trust God to take care of me. I don't have to trust myself or my partner or my family or my situation to get better. I don't got to trust anything because I have a bank statement that is going to magically shield me against everything. And that is garbage.
Well, and I love the old trope of, well, I want enough money so I don't have to think about it. And I always say, no, I want enough money to where I have to think about it. Hey. I want to be able to manage it. Yeah. I want to be able to, because the thing is I can get my head around $20.
I got to tell you, the problem what am I going to do with all this money? That's not a terrible problem.
Right. But what I'm saying is that if you are going to do affirmations, don't affirm a limit on it. You know what I mean?
Well, that's true too. But
if that's the thing, and I would argue, no. Be the person that wants to think about it. Be the person that wants to face these things, these bills, these responsibilities.
For me, the situation was I began to realize that I was trying to find a way to cheat God. I didn't do it on purpose, but I was trying to find a way.
The system.
But God's the system.
God's the system. Okay, all right. I was trying to let you off the hook.
Well, like I said, I didn't do it on purpose, but I'm sure I was breaking a commandment or two unintentionally. But the concept is, how much do you cost? What's your price?
Right.
And I realized I had a price. That stinks.
Yeah.
But realizing it, this is why you need head and heart, in part, because part of it is, once I realized it, I could also think about how that felt. Mm-hmm. And I realized that it didn't feel right and it didn't figure right. And so I was able to go, wait a minute, this is not what I'm praying for. For one thing, I want God to be unlimited in my life. I want God to be bigger than a $5 million price tag. Mm-hmm. But also, I want to not have to put limitations on me.
Right.
So what I want is, instead of, Father, will you please let me win the lottery, which was basically what I was praying for, I changed my prayer time into, Father, can I remember that you are my source, that you take care of me? Can I get rid of the parts of me that are afraid of you not being there, because that's just foolish. I know you're there.
And that's the denial that we're
And I got to tell you, boys and girls, it's not like it was overnight, because sometimes it takes 6 ages to get to a knowing place, but it did happen. And, obviously we still think about money stuff and all that, but you know what? We got a nice house. The kids are good. Everybody went to college, all that stuff. It worked out, and it's working out. And a big part, I know this, it's not just that I believe it, I know it. A big part of it is going, you know what, I don't have a price tag anymore. And my faith does not cost $5 million. I'm asking everybody watching this to take a minute and think about that. And what's your equivalent? If I just had the Red Ryder BB gun, if I just had the thing, I'd be okay. No, you won't. You'll still be you. What if you prayed instead to God, can I please get out of your way? Just as you said so accurately a little bit ago. We're not telling you you're not going to have problems and challenges and stuff to grow. You're gonna. But if you become a person of faith,
you have that to lean on. You have that to find peace with, I think. And at least for me. And, you know, speaking of money stuff or, you know, health stuff or anything like that, at the end of the day, it's like when I'm getting ready to put my head on the pillow, it's like, all right, everybody's safe. Everybody ate today. And that's something to be happy for. Yeah. And that's what I ask for, you know, the daily bread.
Well, and there's a good precedent for that. Well, it seems to me that someone said something about...
Yeah, right. But beyond that, you get very quickly into ego. You know, you could, like, again, you have an understanding, you have a plan. It's important to, you know, be responsible for the things that you need to be responsible for. But I think that there is a difference between just hanging on as tight as you can and the release or the let it be.
Yeah.
You know?
Instead of, God, can you please make sure that Google stock goes up? Can you say, God, may I please remember that you take care of your children? There are challenges in life, you know, but think about the challenges you've had. Stuff has been taken away from you. People, relationships, situations, jobs, possessions, money, whatever, has gone away. But if you look back at your life, there are things that have remained. Mm-hmm. Look at those things. And they tend to not even be things. They're feelings or ideas.
They're moments. They're experiences.
Moments. That's where faith lives. You're good at this already. You just got to remember to let it be. And with that in mind, let's take our opportunity to give. As always, we're so grateful for you watching these videos and commenting. We require you to like and subscribe and share. It's a huge deal. If you want to support this church financially, please do that by going to donate.waterandstonechurch.com. It is more important now than ever before as we move forward into the next experiences of this church and all that. Let's hold those gifts of love and substance in our minds and hearts and say our offertory blessing together. God is my source, my unending supply. With this gift, I carry my gratitude into action. God's blessings flow through me and fill my world. I give and I live with radical joy. And so it truly is. Amen. And I want to remind you that wherever you are, you're not alone. Find ways to reach out this week. Find ways to love your neighbor and take care of somebody. Find some ways to contact us because we want to pray with you and think with you and talk with you and feel with you through all of the things because we are all in this together. But right now, let's pray together as a family. God, I'm ready for change. My heart is open. I'm not afraid anymore. My life is in peace and on purpose. And so it is now and always. Amen.
Amen.
Now go show the world what love looks like today. Thank you.